His thorax begins to breathe again with difficulty, and his head moves from left to right, seeking where it may rest in order to suffer less, but finding nothing but greater pain. With great difficulty, pressing once again on his tortured feet, finding strength in his will and only in it, Jesus stiffens on the cross. He stands upright, as if he were a healthy man, with all his strength. He raises his face, looking with wide open eyes at the world stretched at his feet, at the faraway town, which one can see just indistinctly as a vague whiteness in the midst, and at the dark sky, where every trace of blue and of light has disappeared. And to this closed, compact, low sky, resembling a huge slab of dark slate, he shouts in a loud voice, overcoming with his willpower and with the need of his soul the obstacle of his swollen tongue and his oedematous throat, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani." I hear him say so. He must feel that he is dying, and in absolute abandonment by heaven, if he confesses his Father's abandonment with such an exclamation. People laugh and deride him. They insult him, saying, "God has nothing to do with you. Demons are cursed by God." Other people shout, "Let us see whether Elijah, whom he's calling, will come to save him." And others say, "Give him some vinegar, that he may gargle his throat. It helps one's voice." Elijah or God, as it is uncertain what this madman wants, are far away. A loud voice is required to make oneself heard, and they laugh like hyenas or like demons. But no soldier gives him vinegar, and no one comes from heaven to give comfort. It is the solitary, total, cruel, also supernaturally cruel agony of the great victim. The avalanches of desolate grief, which had already oppressed him at Gethsemane, come back again. The waves of the sins of all the world come back to strike the shipwrecked innocent, to submerge him in their bitterness. And above all, what comes back is the sensation, more crucifying than the cross itself, more despairing than any torture, that God has abandoned him, and that his prayer does not rise to him. And it is the final torture, the one that accelerates death, because it squeezes the last drops of blood out of the pores, because it crushes the remaining fibres of the heart, because it ends what the first knowledge of this abandonment has begun, death. Because of that, as first cause, my Jesus died, O God, who have struck him for us. Because after your abandonment, through your abandonment, what does a person become? Either insane or dead. Jesus could not become insane because his intelligence was divine. And since intelligence is spiritual, it triumphed over the total trauma of him whom God had struck. So, he became a dead man, the most holy dead man, the most innocent dead man. He who was the life was dead, killed by your abandonment and by our sins. Darkness becomes deeper. Jerusalem disappears completely. The very slopes of Calvary seem to vanish. Only the top is visible, as if darkness held it high up to receive the only and last surviving light, laying it as an offering with its divine trophy on a pool of liquid onyx, so that it may be seen by love and by hatred. And from that light, which is no longer light, comes the plaintive voice of Jesus, I am thirsty. A wind, in fact, is blowing, which makes even healthy people thirsty. A strong wind that now blows continuously and is full of dust, cold and frightening. And I think of what pain its violent gusts must have caused to the lungs, the heart, the throat of Jesus, and to his frozen, benumbed, wounded limbs. Everything has really combined to torture the martyr. A soldier goes towards a jar in which the assistants of the executioner have put some vinegar with gall, so that with its bitterness it may increase the salivation of those condemned to capital punishment. He takes the sponge immersed in the liquid. He sticks it on a thin yet stiff cane, which is already available nearby, and offers the sponge to the dying victim. Jesus leans eagerly forward towards the approaching sponge. He looks like a starving baby seeking the nipple of its mother. Mary, who sees, and certainly has such a thought leaning on John, says with a moan, "Oh, and I cannot give him even one of my tears. O breast of mine, why do you not trickle milk? O God, why do you abandon us thus? A miracle for my son. Who will lift me up so that I may quench his thirst with my blood, since I have no milk?" Jesus, who has greedily sucked the sour, bitter drink, makes a wry face in disgust. Above all, it must act as a corrosive on his wounded, split lips. He withdraws, loses heart, abandons himself. All the weight of his body falls heavily on his feet and forward. His wounded extremities are the parts that suffer the dreadful pain as they're torn open by the weight of the body that abandons itself. He makes no further movement to alleviate such pain. His body, from his hips upwards, is detached from the cross and remains such. His head hangs forward so heavily that his neck seems hollowed in 3 places. At the throat, which is completely sunken, and at both sides of the sternum and cleidomastoid. He pants more and more, and interruptedly, as it sounds more like a death rattle. Now and again, a painful fit of coughing brings a light rosy foam to his lips, and the intervals between one expiration and the next one are becoming longer and longer. His abdomen is now motionless. Only his thorax still heaves, but laboriously and with difficulty. Pulmonary paralysis is increasing more and more. And fainter and fainter, sounding like a child's wailing, comes the invocation, "Mother." And the poor wretch whispers, "Yes, darling, I'm here." And when his sight becomes misty and makes him say, "Mother, where are you? I cannot see you anymore. Are you abandoning me as well?" And they're not even words, but just a murmur that can hardly be heard by her who with her heart rather than with her ears receives every sigh of her dying son. She says, "No, no, son, I will not abandon you. Listen to me, my dear. Your mother is here. She's here. And she only regrets that she cannot come where you are." It is heartrending. And John weeps openly. Jesus must hear him weep, but he does not say anything. I think that his impending death makes him speak as if he were raving, and that he does not even know what he says. And unfortunately, he does not even understand his mother's consolation and his favourite apostle's love. Longinus, who inadvertently is no longer standing at ease with his arms folded across his chest and one leg crossed over the other alternately to ease the long weight on his feet, and is now instead standing stiff at attention, his left hand on his sword, his right one held against his side, as if he were on the steps of the imperial throne, does not want to be influenced. But his face is affected in the effort of overcoming his emotion, and his eyes begin to shine with tears that only his iron discipline can refrain. The other soldiers who were playing dice have stopped and have stood up, putting on the helmets that had served to cast the dice. They are near the little steps dug in the tufa, looking heedful and silent. The others are on duty and cannot move. They look like statues. But some of those who are closer and hear Mary's words mutter something between their lips and shake their heads. There is dead silence. Then, in utter darkness, the word, "Everything is accomplished," is clearly heard, and his death rattle grows louder and louder, with longer and longer pauses between one rattle and the next one. Time passes in such distressing rhythm. Life comes back when the air is pierced by the harsh breathing of the dying victim. Life stops when the painful sound is no longer heard. One suffers hearing it. One suffers not hearing it. One says, "Enough of this suffering." And then one says, "Oh God, let it not be his last breath." All the Marys are weeping, with their heads leaning against the scarp. And their weeping is clearly heard, because the crowd is now silent again, to listen to the death rattles of the dying master. There is silence again. Then the supplication pronounced with infinite kindness, with fervent prayer, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." Further silence. Also, the death rattle becomes fainter. It is just a breath confined to his lips and throat. Then, there is the last spasm of Jesus. A dreadful convulsion that seems to tear the body with the 3 nails from the cross, rises 3 times from the feet to the head, through all the poor tortured nerves. It heaves the abdomen 3 times in an abnormal way, then leaves it after dilating it, as if it were upsetting the viscera, and it drops and becomes hollow, as if it were empty. It heaves, swells and contracts the thorax so violently that the skin sinks between the ribs, which stretch, appearing under the skin and reopening the wounds of the scourges. It makes the head fall back violently, once, twice, 3 times, hitting the wood hard. It contracts all the muscles of the face in a spasm. Accentuating the deviation of the mouth to the right, it opens wide and dilates the eyelids, under which one can see the eyeballs roll and the sclerotic appear. The body is all bent. In the last of the 3 contractions, it is a drawn arch which vibrates and is dreadful to look at. And then, a powerful cry, unimaginable in that exhausted body, burst forth, rending the air, the loud cry mentioned by the Gospels, and is the first part of the word, "Mother," and nothing else. His head falls on his chest. His body leans forward. The trembling stops. He breathes no more. He has breathed his last.